And now you have to ask yourself, how did 50 come into the possession of Diddy's footage for Diddy's documentary about Diddy?
That question, how did 50 Cent come into possession of Diddy's own footage for a documentary about Diddy, is the kind of question that sounds like a punchline right up until you sit with it for a moment, because underneath the laughter is something genuinely worth thinking about. The man who was supposed to control that footage lost control of it the moment he lost his freedom, and the man who built his entire career on knowing things other people don't, on being 3 steps ahead of every situation, was right there waiting when the camera stopped having an owner. That's not luck. That's 50 Cent being 50 Cent.
This is crazy because he's making a document himself, but then he took that documentary. Apparently what happened was that Diddy did go to jail, and then he couldn't pay the cameraman.
Kurt Burrows has a lot of insight. And, this documentary is about people being able to tell their truth or tell their version of the story.
For a long time, Katt Williams was dismissed as the outspoken comedian who spoke too freely. People laughed, brushed off his words, and moved on. But something shifted. When Katt Williams appeared on Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharpe, the tone changed. The laughter faded, and people started listening. Because this time, it wasn't just jokes, it was timing. His statements began aligning with real events unfolding around Sean Combs, raising questions about influence, control, and an industry that survives by keeping certain truths buried. Then came 50 Cent. With the release of Sean Combs, The Reckoning, the conversation exploded. The documentary brought forward patterns, timelines, and footage that had circulated quietly for years. But viewers noticed something. Not just what was shown, but what was missing. Certain names, certain connections, entire pieces of the story that seemed intentionally absent. And suddenly, Katt Williams didn't sound crazy anymore. He sounded early.
The Katt Williams shift is one of the most documented public perception reversals in recent entertainment history. For years, the formula was consistent. He says something, the industry laughs. The blogs write it up as another Katt Williams moment, and everyone moves on. But the Club Shay Shay appearance changed the physics of that cycle, not because he said anything dramatically different from what he'd been saying, because the timing finally caught up with him. Events started confirming things he'd said years before they happened, and once that pattern became undeniable, the entire library of things he'd said before got pulled back out and re-examined. Suddenly, the man who sounded crazy started sounding early, and early in this context is a much more uncomfortable thing to be than crazy.
Def Comedy Jam 25. It's good to see so many funny people together in one room, all wondering the same thing. Is Katt Williams gonna show up?
Shit, I'm nervous as hell right now.
Yeah! Yeah! Oh, he's right there. There he is. I didn't know he was right there. I would not have said that if I had said that. Yeah! I'm not used to quiet, introspective Katt Williams.
No. Well, let me ask you this. When have you ever seen this many heavy hitters all together at the same time?
Yeah.
In the same room? Yeah.
That's right.
Giving food to the poor. They was on the streets getting people off of drugs. So they knew Pac had that in them. So I definitely would say they was watching them.
Yeah, I mean, me hearing you break that down like that, you making some good points.
And not only that, Pac himself had disdain. He had hatred for cops. Well, crooked cops, let's say that. You know what I mean? Because the same thing, you got to understand, a lot of his music, he was going against the cops. And off his, even personal, when we around him, he just had a hatred for crooked cops. So one thing about Pac is that, but he used to always say, like, if it's a cop that really do his job and he's fair, we love him. But because he went through what he went through as a kid, you know what I mean? They used to have to, you know what I mean? They used to be in a building and then waking up and they got to put peanut butter all over the walls to hide the prints because the FBI is coming. They had to run to another house. So he grew up in that environment. You know what I mean? And then he got police brutality against him when he was crossing the street. And then he hear how they put a shotgun to his mother's stomach while she was pregnant. So if you hear this as a kid, you're going to naturally have a disdain or hatred towards the police. When he got older, he realized that all police not bad.
Pac's relationship with authority wasn't just biographical context, it was the operating system that everything else ran on. When you understand what he grew up watching, the FBI at the door, the peanut butter over the fingerprints, or the shotgun pressed against his mother's stomach before he was even born, his music stops being political statement and starts being personal testimony. The disdain wasn't ideological, it was experiential, and what the people around him noticed was that as he got older, the absolutism softened slightly. He began distinguishing between the institution and the individuals inside it. That distinction matters because it suggests someone still capable of nuance, still processing, still evolving, which makes what happened to him feel even more specifically targeted. You don't lose someone who was still figuring things out and call it coincidence.
At first, the idea seemed simple. What if Sean Combs wasn't acting alone? What if there were layers behind him? Protection built quietly over time. Katt Williams once hinted at something specific. Not just power, but a number. 7. 7 individuals in the industry who couldn't be challenged. At the time, it sounded vague. Now, people are going back, trying to fill in the blanks.
Prostitutes, having them come to different places and have sex. It was that too. Because let me just tell you something, man. The feds ain't give a damn about Cassie getting her ass whooped in that hallway. Let's keep it a buck. We had several times that we've seen professional athletes smack and beat up their girls on camera. Jay-Z got his ass whooped by his sister-in-law on camera. What's her name? Solange. He got his ass. The feds ain't step in and do nothing. The feds don't care about you getting your ass whooped. It's those other things that come under the guidelines that they care about.
Yeah, I mean, the tape comes out, man, and the way I seen it when the tape came out, it made it look like everything Cassie was accusing him of now has credibility.
7, that number. 7 individuals in the industry who operated above accountability. Sounds like the kind of thing you hear and immediately file under conspiracy theory. All until you start placing it next to the pattern of what actually happened. The Gina allegations before the Cassie tape, the complete media silence around those allegations while Diddy was still protected, the way the hotel footage functioned as a permission slip. Suddenly, every accusation that had been dismissed got credibility the moment there was something visible to attach it to. What that sequence of events actually reveals is that the protection was real, the suppression was active, and the footage didn't create the truth. It just finally made the truth undeniable enough that the protection became too expensive to maintain.
Before we seen that tape, it was a young lady named Gina that accused Puff of punching her, kicking her, and totally assaulting her while she was pregnant. Not one news media other than I think Tasha K ran that. Nobody did nothing because he was protected by those people. He was still in good with those people. The federal government is just as guilty as Diddy.
Do you believe that media and people in general, or even people in high places, are scared of Diddy? And they're scared like how powerful he is and the things that he could do to them?
I don't think they are scared of him. I think they more so, they don't want him to embarrass their reputation and things that they've been known for. You understand? I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their brand. That's why a lot of those rappers, that's why a lot of those athletes, they not saying nothing and they quiet as a church mouse. Because now they don't want to mess up their brand and they don't know what he's going to say.
The silence from certain names is the part of this story that keeps generating its own momentum, because in a situation this public, this documented, this widely discussed, silence is no longer neutral. It's a position, and the people paying attention have started treating it as one. The comment about people not being scared of Diddy specifically, but being terrified of what Diddy knows about them, reframes the entire dynamic. It's not fear of the man, it's fear of the footage, fear of the tape, fear of whatever evidence exists that could transform a carefully maintained public image into something else entirely overnight. That's not loyalty, that's leverage, and leverage held by someone sitting in a federal detention facility is leverage that could be deployed at any moment for any number of reasons.
You ain't heard nothing from his biggest fan, Stevie J. He been quiet.
A lot of people are quiet. That's a fact. Well, you know, one of the things that happened right after Diddy was arrested is a long list of CEOs stepped down. What are your thoughts on that?
Half of New York City stepped down. So, did you know that, Cam?
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah. In the mayor's office, damn near everybody is stepping down. From fire chiefs to police chiefs to commissioner of this, commissioner of that, the Board of Education and everything. I'm like, yo, damn, all of them was on Diddy Island? I don't even know. But what I'm saying to you, allegedly, all these people are stepping down because they don't want to lose their pension. They don't want to be brought up in this whole Diddy mess. And they preparing. It appears to me that they preparing, if anything come out, that they could be already out and it won't be a big to-do. They already someplace else. They already living a whole different lifestyle. So if their name came up, it won't be real big, great news because they're not in those positions anymore. That's what it appeared to me. They was getting out those positions so that it won't be a whole media race if they name come up in any of that stuff. They'd be like Kevin Lau, oh, the former CEO of, you know what I'm saying? It'll go away.
The CEO resignations in the wake of Diddy's arrest are the detail that most people processed and then moved past too quickly, because what was described, fire chiefs, police commissioners, Board of Education officials, nearly everyone in positions of institutional authority in New York stepping down in a concentrated window, doesn't look like coincidence when you place it inside this specific timeline. The theory being laid out here isn't complicated. You resign before your name surfaces. You become the former commissioner, the former chief, the former director, and when your name eventually appears in a document or a testimony, the headline reads like old news about someone who already left. The story still gets written, it just doesn't stay on the front page as long. That's not panic, that's planning, and planning requires knowing something is coming.
But if he was still working there, then it'd be a big news and a big to-do.
One name kept resurfacing: Snoop Dogg. For years, his connection to Sean Combs wasn't hidden. Interviews, appearances, shared spaces, all of it documented, not proof of anything, but enough to raise questions. And more importantly, enough to make people wonder why he wasn't mentioned at all. Because at that level, absence doesn't feel accidental. It feels calculated. Then came another unexpected name: Kevin Hart. Fans started revisiting old clips, early performances, industry connections. Not as confirmation, but as context. Because in an environment like this, proximity matters, and the closer someone is to power, the harder it becomes to separate truth from silence.
Unsolved.
Well, on all honestly, brother, you would have to ask him that. You know what I'm saying? But if I'm looking at it like that, then I know, you know, those mansions are heavily guarded, one. Two, he wasn't getting the love that he would get I don't think he getting love in L.A. I don't know. He say he owns L.A. He runs L.A. He runs Miami, and he runs New York. So by him running L.A. as he say he does, I would feel comfortable too. You know what I'm saying? If I knew for a fact that the person they got, and that was enough to call back all of everything, I would feel that comfortable too. But I wouldn't live there. I wouldn't go there. I'd do business and get on out of there if I was still afraid. I don't think he may have not ever been afraid. You understand? Because he never acted like he was afraid for whatever reason it was. I can't pinpoint it myself, man. The kid had me running around California like it was a joke, and I knew better than that. So by Mace saying that, I guess Mace was like probably putting the finger on Puff a little bit. Yo, dude, you know why you living out there now, because you know big murders was enough to make everything be smooth.
Snoop Dogg's absence from the documentary is the gap that nobody can explain away cleanly, because the documentation of his proximity to Diddy's world isn't hidden. It's public record, interviews, funny appearances, shared stages, decades of visible connection to the same spaces and the same circles. And yet in a documentary that apparently has over 100 hours of footage to draw from, 100 hours, that name and those connections occupy essentially no space. The question that raises isn't whether Snoop did anything. The question is why someone with that much material made that specific editorial choice. Mace operating in a similar space of silence adds another data point. His history with Diddy is documented. The fallout is documented. The distance that followed is documented. And yet when everything surfaced, the expected testimony never came. In a story about who spoke and who didn't, who risked something to say what they knew and who chose the protection of silence, these absences are writing their own chapter.
Whatever that everything is.
Do you think Puffy know who is responsible for Biggie death? Do you think he got some inside info on who killed Biggie? Because the murder is still unsolved, so that is wild for him to be living in LA knowing that Biggie got killed in LA, knowing that the murder is still unsolved. That's crazy, man, when you think about it.
Well, if he's listening to the FBI, he knows what happened to Big's killer. He knows what happened to the people who was behind that. If he's listening to the FBI. If he's listening to the streets and everything like that, still in all, they wanted him just as much they wanted Big. If so much they wanted Big. We knew that Big was having flack from the dog pound cats and maybe a few dudes at Death Row, or maybe not. Puff was having flack from the dog pound, I guess, and he was trying to straighten that out. That's probably the reason why him and Snoop went to that thing with the Steve Harvey show. But anyway, I think Puff was just trying to air some stuff out. So he knew Big was leaving his label. He knew Big was starting his own label, having his own thing. So he was trying to straighten out as much as possible so that none of that shit that was happening with the Junior Mafia would go over to Bad Boy and their artists when they start their new thing.
It's the Biggie conversation and Diddy choosing to live in Los Angeles. The exact city where Biggie was killed in a murder that remains officially unsolved is the kind of detail that sounds almost too on the nose to be real, but it is real, and the framework being offered for why that might make sense, that a man who understands what happened to Biggie, who potentially knows things that the public record doesn't contain, would feel a specific kind of safety in the city where those events occurred, is deeply uncomfortable to think about for very long, not because it's necessarily true, but because it's internally consistent in a way that makes it impossible to fully dismiss.
And then there's Mace. Maybe the quietest name in all of this. His history with Sean Combs is well documented. Contracts, fallout, distance. So when everything started surfacing, people expected him to speak, but he didn't. And sometimes, silence says more than anything else. The deeper you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. This isn't about one person. It's about a system. A structure where influence decides visibility, and visibility decides accountability. Because when something gets too big, too connected, too risky, it doesn't get exposed. It gets edited.
That Rat Pack, and I don't want to even say their names because they said I got their names wrong last time. What's his name? Kushner? What's the other guy? Leonardo? Yeah, his name. Man, I don't keep up with these cats. But I heard that that's not only the tape that's being shot. There's some other tapes out there, other people too with him. And him doing some things with some other people. So it's quite a few tapes that might be out there, what they're hearing. And I don't want to see the tapes, but I want to know if they're really true. Because if they got if they got some tapes out there and it's with some underage, whether it's celebrities or not, it's gonna be crazy, bro. It's gonna be real crazy. And they're gonna have to bring that to forefront because the prosecutor's gonna want those tapes. And they're gonna do whatever they have to do legally to get those tapes. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. So we just better hope for his sake, that that's just a bunch of bull crap. But then there's lawyers out there saying, yeah, the tape does exist.
Tape conversation is where speculation becomes genuinely difficult to navigate responsibly. Because on one side you have lawyers going on television and saying the tapes exist. On the other side, you have the impossibility of verifying anything that hasn't been presented in a courtroom. What's certain is this: the federal prosecution of Sean Combs involves allegations serious enough that if additional footage exists and is relevant to those charges, the prosecution has both the motivation and the legal authority to pursue it. The specificity of certain details being discussed publicly, ages, celebrity status, the power dynamic involved, suggests that whatever information is circulating in certain circles goes beyond general rumor. Whether any of it surfaces in a way that can be verified is a question that only the legal process can answer, but the conversation is happening. And it's happening with a specificity that pure invention rarely produces.
Lawyers got on television to say the tapes exist. I don't really know or trust that, because they was trying to say he had a tape with one of the bodyguards and this lady that came out. So we don't know what to think until we actually see that and we get that version. You remember we had that bootleg version of R. Kelly tape?
Yeah, I remember that.
They don't even bootleg. They don't even bootleg no more, man. So it's going to be hard to figure it out if it does exist.
Do you believe the guy in the tape is white?
If he's bigger than Diddy and he's not none of the names that I said, probably so. But then they say he was young too.
Yeah, they say he was young.
Let me get his name right. I hope it ain't the Bieber. I hope it's not the Bieber.
That's a good one. It might be him. But if they saying that the guy is young and he's an A-lister, I can't think of that many black people, man.
Right. Not at all. And somebody that more powerful, more of a celebrity than Diddy. You understand what I'm saying? If they were saying somebody that was more celebrity than Diddy, he was an A-lister, he was younger. You know what I'm saying? And if he's not black, it would have to be the Bieber. That's his name, Bieber? They said I got that wrong too. Justin Bieber, allegedly. I don't know, bro.
Right. But when you heard the news that Diddy, he had a tape with another man, did that catch you by surprise or no?
Well, all this shit is by surprise to me. A lot of this shit is by surprise to me, to be totally honest, man. Because I knew Puff, I knew Puff Daddy. I knew Diddy before he was Love and Brother Love and back to Diddy. So, no, but the diddler, he's the diddler now. A lot of it's surprising, but it's not unheard of. Because you hear of all kinds of shit, and whether it registered with you or you internalize it or something like that, that's a whole nother story. But a lot of this stuff is crazy. But this is the world that we live in now, man. That these individuals thinks is all right. Bruh, when does it comes all right to be sitting there eating food off a naked woman? When did we start doing what they do? Let's keep it a buck. When did we start doing what they do? These guys is popping pills. They got Jay-Z dancing with a chick that's into cannibalism and supposed to be witchcraft and stuff like that. When did we start doing that? It's messing up who we are and our culture. And these guys is out here selling it to us like it's all right. And it's not all right, bro.
The cultural question underneath all of this is the one that gets asked least often and matters most. When did it become acceptable? When did the practices being described, the parties, the pressure, the specific dynamics that are now being detailed in federal filings, become normalized enough that entire industries built themselves around accommodating them? The observation that hip-hop was sold a version of success that required participating in something most of its audience would find unrecognizable if they understood what it actually involved. That's the uncomfortable indictment buried inside every individual name and every individual accusation. It's not just about one man's behavior. It's about the infrastructure that made that behavior sustainable for decades. Who built it? Who maintained it? Who profited from it? And who looked the other way because looking away was the price of access?
We got to get back to us and what hip hop was meant to be. Not what they want you to think it's supposed to be.
Moni Love was there. Cousin Sonny was there. Imrel was outside smoking a blunt, so she missed the infamous picture with all of us together with Katt. And me and him sitting next to each other, two hats on, two cats in the hat.
Yeah.
And he taught me so much in 9 months. Walking away was hard. But it was when the Illuminati first started coming after him. And I'll never forget the day when they breached the house. And I left. You know, back in that moment, Katt was still wearing Kevlar to bed. To bed. I would get in bed with him at night and he would have Kevlar on.
Wow.
In bed.
50 Cent says there are over 100 hours of footage that never made it into the documentary. 100 hours. And that raises the real question. Not what was shown, but what wasn't. Because according to Katt Williams, the truth doesn't always get denied. Sometimes. It just gets controlled.
Katt Williams wearing Kevlar to bed. That image. That specific, almost unbelievable detail delivered completely seriously by someone who was there is the one that stays with you long after everything else fades. Because it represents the actual physical weight of what it means to say what you know when the people who don't want it said have the resources and the motivation to make sure it stays buried. The man who became the punchline for years, who got laughed at and dismissed and written off, was sleeping in body armor, and the things he was saying then are the things that a federal indictment is now confirming. On over 100 hours of footage that didn't make the documentary. That number is the final piece of the puzzle, because it means the story that was told publicly is not the complete story. It means there is an entire other version of this. Fuller, more specific, more connected, that exists somewhere. And according to Katt Williams, the truth was never the problem. Control was.